page 137. Right, the mover of this is going to be myself, and the seconder is Councillor Simpson, so we've got something being distributed. I might reserve my right of reply, that's all, so I ask if anyone wishes to speak to this. It should be, I think, with pretty well agreement. And Ross, would you like to just say something, please?
I just want to give an update. There is a handout being circulated. So there are, just in the for item A, Roman numeral 3, where it talks about the local discretionary initiatives, and there's more detailed recommendations in the officer's report. There are 2 local boards where there's just a slight update to the timing. So the last few days, staff have been working with those 2 local boards. That's the Rodney and the Manurewa local boards, and there's just a slight adjustment with some of the timing of those items being brought forward a little bit. So there's the idea is to reference this tabled attachment in the minutes as well, and we have an update to A3 to refer to the officer report and also the tabled attachment.
I'm fine with that.
Okay, so we just need to have 3 come up so we can see the addition of the extra words. I have no doubt there will be no objection from Manurewa or Rodney representatives.
No, good. Well done.
So, sorry, Ross,
So we can just
what were you suggesting? If
we just add on the end of there and the tabled attachment. Sorry, and the tabled amendment. So, and the tabled amendment.
And the tabled attachment.
Yep.
Councillor Hills.
Just 2 quick questions. One, do we need to put the separate resolution on the Waitemata one to make their full ollie complete? Because we have talked about that, or is that a separate?
That will come to another meeting of a certain committee, which could be, well, would be finance, because that would be a recommendation to.
It's right, the finance. It'll come through the finance performance.
Yep. But do we need to put that in here to give them certainty, or are we sort of saying that's what we're doing? We're giving them the full.
It's covered in the staff advice where it lists the more detailed recommendations, so that is already covered, that it will come back to finance and performance.
So we're confident about that?
Yep. I
Okay.
think we're tight enough.
And the other one, just on Kaipatiki, it's great to see we've closed the gap a little bit, but I still wondered, it's just a thought, you don't have to answer it here, but if that design and business case zone of 2 years could be possibly over time squished up a little, I just think it would, especially for the first part of it where it's just largely replacing that. It's great to see the demolition come a lot, like pretty much straight away, but it's just getting the rest.
Community facilities. Rod Sheridan, Rob, I mean, you don't need to speak. I think we've got enough assurances, and there's been enough goodwill in the last week or so where we've managed to move the gap on Manurewa and more specifically, sorry, the second one of today. So I think there's goodwill there. We're trying to do what we can. I don't think there's any issue. Rob, do you want to say anything about?
Simply that we will certainly make every effort to progress that Birknet project and all these projects as quickly as possible.
Thank you.
Councillor Sayers.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. My question's on behalf of the Rodney Local Board. I just want to acknowledge also the Deputy Chair is here, Payne Perry, been here most of the day. So he's just asked me just to confirm on page 149 that the indoor court facility at Huapai there is in within the first 3 years, as outlined, year 1 being the provision and assessment, year 2 being the indicative business case, and year 3 being the build. Is that? Can I just clarify that, check that?
Yes, so we're looking to, again, as quickly as possible, move to that through the needs assessment and business case phase. If we're able to, we'll look to do that in the first year and get clarity on whatever whatever the appropriate investment is, so we can move on as quickly as possible from there with design.
So that sounds you're trying to do a little bit faster than perhaps outlined here. Okay, all right. Thank you.
Well, again, in a meeting the other day, a workshop at the meeting, which Councillor says you weren't at, but there was an assurance giving. They'll be trying to do what they can by the end of the year to do stage 1 fast track. So that was given, and I got the impression that Phelan and Beth were, in subsequent conversations, were quite happy with where we'd reached this on this, Ollie.
Thank you.
Okay, right, we have a move and a second. There's no one else wishes to speak, and I think this will be unanimous, so I'll put that. All those in favour?
Aye.
Against? Thank you. Excellent.
Congratulations, Chair.
Right, we're swapping from one agenda to the other here. Back to this one. Right, we're going to the local board budget update.
Happy to move this, Mr Chair.
Okay, well done. Seconded by Councillor Simpson. Okay, so you're on page 155 of the open addendum agenda. So let's make sure everyone understands. We have a mover and a seconder. No one, I don't think, wants to talk about this. Okay, I will put that resolution. All those in favour?
Aye.
Aye.
Against? No, that's good. So we are now going to number 12, and we're going to the bold Rodney local targeted rate. Thank you, Phelan. Thank you, Andrew. And Ross is coming back, I believe. So again, we are going to take this as read, but however, I'm going to ask Phelan, or Andrew first, and then Phelan to make a comment if he so wishes.
So we've
55.
produced a resolution reflecting the decisions of the Rodney Local Board for you to pass to the governing body.
Yes, thank you. So I just thanks for the opportunity. Thanks to the Chair and Councillors for the opportunity just to speak to this very, very quickly today because it's been a long day. So I just ask for your support for this transport targeted rate. It has been a difficult decision for the board, as you can imagine. No one likes having their rates put up. It's been labelled everything from brave to suicidal, and in politics those two terms usually mean the same thing. We'd view it as just being pragmatic. I read through the 9,000 pages of feedback on the 10-year plan, and the one common theme was that people just wanted to get on with us to get on with sorting out their transport problems in Rodney. Your pragmatic decision today over the regional fuel tax means that we can tackle our road sealing with a substantial increase in funding, and our targeted rate will deliver a public transport investment across Rodney. This is really important because this gives those who are going to be affected by higher fuel costs, which are inevitable, because of factors from overseas which are beyond our control. This will give those people most vulnerable to those fuel price changes an option to be able to use public transport. Those people also do come in high deprivation areas such as Wellsford and Helensville. So once again, I thank you for the chance to speak to this today, and I would ask for your support for it. Thank you.
I'll move it.
Okay, well, I know we've got Alf thinking, but I've actually got Councillor Cashmore who's decided to move this, and I'll second, and I think where Councillor Cashmore was coming from is it's something that's been done in Frankton a long time ago, so I think he's basically sending out a message to
No, I mean,
his brothers in the north that this is a good thing. So we have Councillor Walker with a question.
Yeah, I just have a question. What was the feedback from the community around support or not for this targeted rate?
So the community feedback on the proposal is it's fairly evenly balanced. A chunk of the community was in support, another proportion was opposed, and there's quite a lot that indicated partial support for the proposal, and their partial support was based on saying yes, we support it, but only if it's spent in the Rodney area. And reassuringly, as a targeted rate to be raised in the Rodney area, it can only be spent in that area. That spending will be monitored and determined by the board. I'll
Any
fish around for the
percentages?
absolute numbers.
Thanks.
I can give you absolute numbers. If you included partials which said yes only if it's spent in Rodney, or yes as long as you get on and do it, and yes if you actually do what you say you're going to do, that's 52% in support of it.
So, Phelan, can you, did you, getting into the specifics, did you talk about, in the light of if the regional fuel tax goes ahead, our priority would be to improve the public transport system?
Yeah, so what's happened is obviously a bit like the decisions you've had to make. I mean, this went out to consultation before people understood what was happening with fuel taxes. Originally, we had proposed a targeted rate that would mainly focus on road sealing with some footpaths. There was some public transport components to it, so a park and ride in Kermu was one of those. When the additional money for road sealing appeared in the RLTP, we made a decision that, based on feedback, that there was quite solid support for public transport. In fact, in some areas we had people going, look, we're not interested in you doing footpaths, we just want a bus service from Helensville to Silverdale or from Kaukopapa to Silverdale. So we rejigged the proposal, and on the assumption that, or on the hope that the 85 million of additional road sealing would be supported, and this means that we deliver a package which is public transport heavy and does deliver on that continued chipping away at the footpaths across Rodney. So this proposal that we have would see a bus service from Wellsford to Warkworth, a park and ride in Warkworth, which would tie in with the new bus service that starts in October, a bus service that would run from Huapai to Albany, and another bus service that would run from Helensville to Kaukopapa across to Silverdale. We just don't have that level of public transport currently in Rodney.
Fantastic. Councillor Filipana.
Thank you, Chair. Just want to applaud the local board for your brave decision, because, as you know, and I harped on about this, Mangere o Tahu, well, the Manukau ward anyway, made that decision 2013 around free swimming pools. Now, we received, and I know the local board did, and you know, they received quite a bit of flack afterwards from residents. But look, at the moment, there's quite a few people going to the pools that we have from other areas. I'm not saying that in regards to the fund that you'll have, but I think you'll have a few more cars driving down your roads. But look, I just want to applaud, can you pass on to your local board the decision that you have made, and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Hills.
Yes, Fallon, it was a little bit about what Councillor Clow had already said, but just wanted to thank you and Beth for the fantastic presentation you gave at the workshop the other day. And, you know, you've been up against it with some pretty tough opposition and personal stuff towards you guys. But I just guess our decision on the regional fuel tax, obviously you've talked about, is, you know, going to significantly increase the investment. Can you talk about, because I didn't really understand, what is the change with, if we pass this plus the regional fuel tax, what do you get compared to what you would have got before?
So the total funding for road sealing is proposed to be 121 million. So that's the Auckland Transport Board's obviously got to make that final decision. That'll probably be the most money that's ever been spent on road sealing in Rodney. So you probably won't have to hear us come back year after year after year asking the same thing, which I'm tired of doing. Yeah. It then, on top of that, that delivers, is it 49 million? 46 million dollars of targeted rate money that will be chip away at the 90 odd footpaths that we still have outstanding, and it will deliver those public transport services that I indicated previously. It's the original proposal was more capex heavy. This is more opex heavy, and the advantage with that is we can deliver these public transport services quite quickly, whereas the capex ones were spread out over the 10 years. So we can hopefully get the public transport in there quickly to help people who are going to need it over the next few years.
Well, thank you for the leadership from yourself and the board.
Thank you.
Councillor Newman.
Thank you, Phelan, and I just wanted to say that it has been a very difficult time for the Rodney Local Board. If this governing body really supported the Rodney Local Board, the proposals that you're putting up in relation to the additional bus services would be funded regionally. You wouldn't have to do it. I think you are having to display more courage than is necessary. I don't know of any other public transport bus services that are funded by a local board targeted rate. I congratulate you for being courageous. You're being more courageous than us, in my view. But the decision that has been, look, if it was me and if I'd been sitting around the Rodney Local Board, if the primary argument was to get funding for a road sealing program in Rodney, having got that through ATAP, I'd be saying, all right, well, thanks very much. I'm going to take the target rate off the table, which I think is actually something that Councillor Sayers would have argued. But so I think you know, I can understand Councillor Sayers' position. I can understand the local board's position. And I think the local board's position is driven significantly due to a sense of desperation about the gap that has occurred, whereby services that are needed, as identified by the boards, have not been addressed regionally. It's not easy, Chair, frankly, to support the Rodney Local Board's targeted rate. I mean, look, I do support a transport targeted rate on property, don't get me wrong, so you know, I'll go along with this. But what the local board is trying to achieve here ought not to be something that the local board actually has to go and require of its constituents in Rodney. This should be part of a regional program. So whilst others might say and congratulate the local board for its leadership, I too congratulate the local board for its courage, but consider that the local board should never have been put in this position in the first place. And I know that look, if I lived in Rodney, I'd vote for all the Rodney local board members. They're great people, and I'm sure that Councillor Sayers will work expeditiously to ensure that they are re-elected in the best interests of the people of Rodney. Thank you.
Well, he hasn't said that.
Do you have a reply?
Councillor Sayers, the local councillor, to conclude this debate. Then John Watson.
Just trying to clarify, we seem to go on from questions to the debate, so I've got some questions and then I'd like to reserve my rights to speak to it.
Yep.
Okay,
questions.
So just three questions. First, directed to Andrew Duncan. The first question is, what would be the percentage increase in rates if the Rodney local targeted transport rate was introduced? What would be the percentage increase, just taking that on residential property? What would it equate to?
7.3%.
Thank you. Now, obviously we've got the 2.5% rate increase we've talked about today and put forward to strike that. So if you combine that 7.3% and the 2.5% general rate increase across Auckland for residential, what would be the percentage increase for an average residential property if those two rates are combined?
Just over 8%, because the average residential rates increase for Rodney's around the 1% level after you take all the factors into account.
Take the ITL off?
Take the ITL off, add the interim transport levy in, long-term differential strategy, the benefits, they haven't increased as much as revaluation. It's somewhere in the 8% range in total, my recollection. I haven't written that down specifically, so
thank you.
It's in that mark.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. My third question to Mr. Duncan is, and this is quite important because I think we all need to be well informed around the table. On page 59 of our agenda, there's a pie chart. It shows that 43% of Rodney isn't in support, 36% was in support, and there's 21% partial. So just looking at those, you'd say, well, most were a no. But of those 21% that gave a partial indication, are you aware of any further analysis or breakdown of those figures that have been presented to the local board?
The further breakdown of analysis is laid out on that in the attachment at pages 59 and 60.
Yes, I'm particularly worried about the comment on page 60 where you've added both the partial in support in with the 21% in with the 36% coming up a number with 37% in support. Some of those partials were, I'm asking about those partial votes because some of those partial votes might have been for and against, or you couldn't really decide. Are you aware of any work that's been done to break down that 21% and how those numbers look?
So some work has been done, and that is what's appropriate. It's been noted in here. The choices were support, partially support, or opposition. So presumably those who ticked partially support were having an element of support in there, although it's up to you as councillors and up to the local board members to establish how they'll weight the views that have been expressed by submitters when making their decisions, your decision.
Thank you. So I just really need to clarify this point, Mr. Chair, because the breakdown of the partial votes.
Sorry, is this your comment time?
No,
or
it's
is this
not.
a
No, it's a
question?
question. I'll put it as a question.
Yeah, put
There
it
is
as a question.
there is a report. So my question is, why is this report missing from the data that we presented today, which shows of the 21% partial support, 48 were no, 41% yes, and there was 11% in yellow and other. So it's because of my mind, Mr. Chair, that adds up to 54 saying no. So so my question is, why isn't this report included for the councillors to digest?
It is on page 59.
No, it's not, Mr. Mayor.
I've got the pie graph right in front of me on my
It's a different
copy.
pie. Of that yellow that you're looking at, Mr. Mayor, that yellow, which is partial, that's been broken down further with further analysis.
Okay, through the chair. So Andrew, please.
So I don't have that document in front of me. I'm thinking it might be some of the materials that were produced for a workshop.
All right, thank you.
Yep, there we are. Right, well, we have Councillor Watson who may have a question, but I think we're on to comments. Are we, Councillor Watson, or you have a question?
Yeah, just
okay, we have
just
Councillor Watson, Mayor Goff, Councillor Hulse, and then Councillor
Mine's
Sayers.
just a quick question.
Oh, we'll go to Councillor Hulse with a question.
Can I just be reminded how much the rates have gone up in Rodney since amalgamation, roughly?
Some work was done for the Local Government Commission. I think the combined increase in rates in water and wastewater charges in the last year for average residential ratepayer in Rodney has been 3.5% in total.
So that's 3.5% over all that.
What, in 7 years? No.
Holy yeah.
Not over 7 years.
No,
Do you remember-
I think that's over 8 years.
Yes.
Over 8 years, the rates in Rodney have gone up.
Water and wastewater charges.
And water and wastewater have gone up 3.7%.
Wow.
So, let's remember that amalgamation did Rodney a huge favour. And I just have to, I hope Penny Webster's watching this because no one advocated harder in those previous 6 years for road sealing in Rodney than our darling Penny. So if she sees this happening, well done, Fallon, for you and your team. I think it's been extraordinary.
That morphed into a comment, but that's okay.
I know.
We will go to Councillor Watson.
Okay, thanks. And I'll be brief here, Mr. Chair. I'm going to support the local board. I generally, as a view, try to support local boards if they come in with proposals, and especially when they're acting on their own initiative, which they've done here. I would just raise a few general concerns in relation to that, echo what Councillor Newman said. I think in terms of the bus service, both Helensville and Warkworth are areas that are growing. There's development occurring there, and specifically in Warkworth, I would have thought the kind of bus services that the local board are willing to fund
should have been coming about as a matter of course. That they're not raises some concerns, and that really goes to my major concern here, is in terms of precedent, where given the kind of rapturous fashion in which the local board have been congratulated, that this then becomes the default go-to for other local boards when there's shortages of services or they're looking for things. Then they say, well, Rodney wanted that or similar, and they were willing to fund it. So as much as I certainly respect the local board for taking their own initiative here and making their own call, and clearly what is a divided issue, I don't think anyone's contesting that. I have sympathies for both sides of the coin here, certainly for those that are trying to hold the line and those who are looking to actually get some things happening. I don't think there's any right or wrong response there. I know which way I'd go if I was in a similar situation, but I think either argument has merit to it. But I would just emphasise, Mr. Chair, that there is a precedent getting set here, and it's one that local boards need to be very mindful of, I think. Thank you.
Right, I have Mayor Goff.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Look, the statute gives local boards the right to set a local targeted rate, and I don't believe that it's appropriate that this governing body should question the local board or challenge their right to do it or overturn their decision to do it. I think we should respect their local decision making. Secondly, Rodney has got big problems, quite different from the other end of Auckland, which is Franklin, which is a similar distance from the city and similar rural nature. Franklin bit the bullet years ago, targeted a rate at sealing, and there's hardly an unsealed road in the Franklin ward now. You've really got to hunt it down. Franklin is quite difficult because its legacy council, or the majority of it, decided not to make that investment, to keep the rates down and not to do any of the work. So I applaud the local board deciding to take this action. I think it's true leadership. The great thing is that, with the regional fuel tax, you are going to get that massive increase, $85 million increase in sealing roads, and that frees you up to do some of the other things that are part of the historic underinvestment. So I've got huge respect for what Phelan and Beth and the majority of the local board has decided. I think we should support them. I think that they've made the decision. They're putting themselves on the line to say, we are going to make a difference for our community. We've got the courage, we've got the commitment, we've got the determination to do it, and I admire all of those qualities. So thank you very much, Phelan, for setting that. And of course, you're not the first board to do a local targeted rate. Actually, it was Tara Papatoetoe and Mangere Otahuhu, and I hope nobody challenged you, Alf, in your desire to do that. We shouldn't challenge the Rodney local board to go with their decision and do what they believe they were elected to do on behalf of their community. So thank you, Phelan. Thank you for the leadership.
Councillor Hills.
Just once again, I think absolutely we should support this. I think that it is difficult for anyone to come to us, but you've come to us both with solutions and projects and plans, but also come to us with the funding mechanisms to cover what you want to do. So I just want to thank the whole local board, but especially yourself, Beth, Brent, Tessa, Cameron and Louise for putting forward the plan and the idea to us. And you're going to see a lot of change on the ground, and people will notice. It may be some pushback at first, but you're going to see with the RLTP, the RFT, and the regional decisions we've made today as a group for your area, as well as the leadership you've had on this, you'll see significant change in the next few years. And if you don't, you better come back here, and we will keep Auckland Transport to its word, and all of us to our word. So thank you once again.
Okay, right. I have Councillor Darby, then Councillor Sayers, and then Councillor Cashmore if he wishes to have right of reply, having been the mover. So Councillor Darby, now I've got Councillor Fletcher and Councillor Wayne Walker. No, we keep it going. Right, we've got Councillor Darby.
Thank you. I'll be brief, but rather than just be silent on this, I do want to acknowledge Phelan's work on this. He's been in correspondence with the Deputy Mayor and myself on this for a couple of months. He indicated it was coming. He was testing it politically with us. But it's not just Phelan, it's a board of Beth Holbrook as the chair, and Brent Bailey, Cameron Brewer, formerly around this table, Tessa Berger and Louise Johnston. I think they are the names that have got him behind this and backed it. And I just really want to commend the tremendous leadership of the Rodney local board. And they haven't just relied on a few pie charts analysis. They've actually got down dirty and, well, not too dirty, and dug in and communicated with their community and engaged quite richly and deeply to find the point where they can safely support this. And I think it's been real determination on their part, and I acknowledge you, Phelan, for being the principal leader of this work. You've done a great job. And of course we know that development contributions are going to be tracking into Rodney. They just won't be tracking in time to deliver the necessary infrastructure. That's just the product of the DC scheme, unfortunately. So the board can't wait for that. You're getting on with it and you're showing real clear direction to your people. Well done.
Councillor Sayers.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, look, I'm not in support of the transport targeted rate on Rodney's ratepayers for very good reasons, because the Rodney ratepayers do not support it. It would be wrong for us to vote on something that the Rodney residents don't want. The Rodney local board may want it, but the Rodney's public do not want it. I'm all for the local boards receiving greater greater funding and to be empowered to do more, but that has to be done responsibly and within fiscal envelopes and with public support. I want to look at three things: financial impact, the public feedback, and the relationship of this to the local government commission inquiry. Financially, Aucklanders are going to be paying on average a 2.5% rate increase, except for Rodney. It's going to pay the 2.5% general rate increase, plus the Rodney local board targeted rates, which we've just had confirmed, will now take it to over 8% for every year for the next 10 years. 8% for Rodney, 2.5% for everyone else.
That is not.
For basic services that Auckland Council should be providing anyway. So where's the equity in that? I've always supported the Rodney local board and supported its projects. But I can't understand why Beth Holbrook's local board wants to vote in this target rate against the public's wishes. Look, even the Rodney local board itself isn't unanimous on this. They're split over it because they've seen what the public feedback has been. I ask that we do the right thing today and we listen to the voice of the Rodney ratepayers, to the disenfranchised people and the feeling in Rodney. So what are the public saying? I'm certainly not comfortable that this hasn't been included with the councillor's report and it's been excluded for some reason. However, the official feedback is that 43% of Rodney's residents support or partially support the targeted rate. So 54%, the majority, said that they did not support it or were in the other category. Clearly, there is no mandate, public mandate, to support this transport targeted rate. You should vote against the Rodney local board's push and uphold the voice of the people of Rodney. And all this was done before the central government announced its fuel tax. Now the public sentiment would be even more heavily against it. You must carefully consider that. You must also carefully consider why these things are not being regionally funded. In conclusion, I want to bring to everyone's attention the Local Government Commission report, which emphasised that Auckland Council must dedicate council funds to address inequality around the lack of spending on basic transport needs in Rodney. That's what it said. Tolls, rates, development contributions are there to fund basic transport needs. And Auckland Council must dedicate funds to address the inequality around the lack of spending on transport needs in Rodney. The advocates will say this is being brave and bold with other people's money. The idea of introducing higher rates for Rodney totally fails to address the inequalities that the Local Government Commission discovered. Such a move is actually detrimental to Rodney's cause. The brave thing to do is to take a stand against these inequalities and to fight for the constituents' rights. Do the right thing and respect the voice of the Rodney ratepayers. Vote this down.
Andrew, Councillor Sayers made a statement that next year it's going to be 2.5 plus 8% again, and then the following year 3.5 and 8% again. Can you just clarify whether
sorry,
there's
8%.
going to be...
Sorry, Ross. Just to clarify that, what I was saying there, the 2.5 mixed in with the Rodney targeted rate will take it to 8, and that's set. This is set for in a 10-year budget, so that'd be this each year for every year. And if we went to 3.5% in a couple of years, that might.
Can we just get clarification there, Andrew?
So the Councillor says is right. The general, or the total rates impact for Rodney Local Board Transport targeted rate, and all the other changes, including revaluation, 8.4, I think, for Rodney next year. The year after, it'll be 2.5, then 3.5.
Yeah, thank you.
This
All
is
good.
a one-off jump, but
Right,
it is in
Councillor
the 8
Fletcher.
range. That's this 1 year.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think whenever we start to really do a deep dive into any ward with transport, it becomes quite complicated. And so I decided to go and do a bit of my own research on this one. So I went and had a long chat to our former colleague, Cameron Brewer, who sends his best wishes to everybody, but said he's not actually missing these budget debates. You would be surprised to know. But he...
Be watching.
Yeah, I'm sure he's watching. I'm sure he's watching. You know, he'll have his popcorn and he'll be sitting there probably with a glass of wine. However, he reminded me that he is the spokesperson on transport, and he wanted it known that he did support the local board targeted rate initiative. But he also wanted it known that he thinks that the advocacy that the people of Rodney have had from both their ward councillor and the local board has been outstanding in the last little while, which is why we are seeing some real progression in terms of the issues. So he sent his best wishes to the local board for their success today, but he also sent his best wishes to the ward councillor. And so I'm going to vote for the targeted rate, and I, along with others, want to thank Phelan for the attendance here today, and I hope that we can see it adopted and see more good things coming out of Rodney.
Councillor Walker and then Councillor Cooper, and I think that really would pretty well knocks it off, I think.
Yeah,
Oh, and Councillor Cashman with the right to reply.
couple of quick points, Mr. Chair. First off, it is of concern that arguably the residents and ratepayers of Rodney will probably be making the biggest proportionate contribution through the regional fuel tax. So they are being rather hard done by. I think the other issue that I want to raise is that given the local board has taken a significant measure of responsibility around this issue, I think it's fair that they also have a high degree of accountability, and I would hope have a great deal of oversight over the projects and the allocation of money, the value for money on the part of Auckland Transport, so that we don't have gold-plated stuff, because there are any number of Rodney residents and ratepayers that would suggest that at this point they're paying quite a lot for what they get out of the expenditure on roading and footpaths and so on. So I would hope that the local board has got more authority, Mr. Chair, and that is somewhat similar to the position that we're putting the Waiheke local board in. Rodney is rather similar.
All right, Councillor Cooper.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do support this because I support the fact that the local board are willing to basically stick their neck out and do this. You know, there's bigger all PT options in Rodney. It's really hard. They don't have a lot of choices. You know, they're not going to get the train. If they're going to wait for, you know, this supposedly magnificent light rail, that'll be 10 years. So here's a local board that's willing to go, okay, if you just help us out a bit here, we'll give you some buses, which gives you options to reduce the amount of petrol you have to use. You know, and we heard at the workshop the other day, and it's a shame you weren't there, Councillor Sayers, because a lot of those questions you asked today were answered there. I just think it's, you know, sometimes it's not always the cheapest rate rise which is the best. Sometimes you've got to spend a bit of money to actually get some progress. And I think once, and I'm hoping that once this fuel extra rate has been in for maybe 2 or 3 years, that AT say, actually, it's fine now, we don't need it. We've caught up, and this is just going to be taken into the regular, you know, run-of-the-mill. This will be normal now, and it won't need to go on for 10 years. That would be a great outcome because you've been willing to step forward. So I want to acknowledge you, Phelan and Beth and Cameron, and I know it's not the whole board except one that doesn't support this, but I think...
Three.
Okay, sorry, 3. But anyway, look, the majority, and at the end of the day, sometimes you've just got to, you know, just got to be brave. And so I think it'll be great for you to have some extra public transport in Rodney. So I support this, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, Russ.
Right, so just want to clarify, Andrew, so clearly we can probably see the start of the next local body election already up in Rodney, but in 3 years' time, quite clearly, if a new local board comes along, or indeed in 2 years' time, could rescind this, couldn't they, and go back to square one. So could you just explain that?
So the targeted rate is set every year in the annual plan, and if a new board wanted to consult on it, on changing that, they will be able to do so. We've already set up some systems to keep a track of the spending and to support the local board in implementing it, monitoring it, getting value for money, and establishing whether any of the services are not worth it, so they can cut them, or if they're successful, as Councillor Cooper suggested, they may well get picked up by AT later. And I think AT might be thinking about a program manager for this specifically to support it.
Great.
All right, we've got Councillor Cashmore to close the debate.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chair. The Governance Framework Review, which I chaired earlier on this year, one of the key outcomes was the potential for local boards to have the power to introduce targeted rates and how the mechanisms would be put around that to achieve it. They started off with Ben Franklin and Rodney were quite keen, and then Manurewa signed up to actually be potentially interested in Waitemata. It's a work in progress, I would suggest. The Local Government Commission request was also along the same lines. Please empower more local decision making. So this morning we voted for an extra $85 million to help sealing roads in mostly northern Rodney. And that's admirable and laudable. The local board wants to add to that with east-west public transport, to do footpaths on pathways that lead to schools, which are probably now grass, mud or shingle at the best. They are taking a brave initiative. That's tough. And my closing comment, Mr. Chair, would be very simple along the lines that doing nothing changes nothing. Doing nothing does not achieve anything. And the Rodney Local Board want to achieve something. They want to make a difference, and this change does enable them, and they are setting, I think, a good learning curve for other boards and us going forward, and all power to their arm.
Right, we have two resolutions there, which the B has been changed, so we've got to move in a second. I'm going to put those. All those in favour say aye.
Aye. Aye.
And against?
I'll just note mine against, Ross.
And we're going to note Councillor Sayers is against. So right, we're now moving on to item 13, which is page 139 of the main again, the open agenda, so we're flipping between things, so... So, once again, going to take this as read, and I don't think there's anything that needs to be added at 5:30.
Happy to move, Mr. Chair.
5:30 tonight. Moved by Councillor Walker. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Fletcher. Thank you. Right, are there any questions?
Happy not to have any questions, Mr. Chair.
We're even happier.
Any debate?
We debated this last time.
Move the question before.
Okay, right, we'll put this. We're going to move in a seconder. All those in favour, say aye.
Aye.
Against? No one against. We're now going to item 14, fees, charges and other rating matters. And we have Andrew back again, no doubt. Andrew and Aaron. Andrew. And again, we're taking this as read. There's no late changes or anything. I'm happy to move this. Councillor Simpson is happy to second. Are there any questions? Councillor Casey.
Mr. Chairman, the Puki Tāpapa Local Board presented to the Finance Committee seeking a full review of the benefits to businesses from council spending before any reductions to the business differential, before 3 years and then wait. I just wondered how you viewed that and how that fits today. Because we're setting in place something for the next 10 years, and I think there was, well, I feel quite comfortable about the review. Can it be written into this at all?
No, the advice was for that to be brought up next year because, needless to say, we don't need to do it this year. If you remember last year, we actually suspended the tracking down to 25.8, so I mean it is something that can change year to year, depend on it, but the Mayor has had representations and heard from one board in particular, but has also heard the mood from a couple of other boards, so he will reflect on that in next year's mayoral proposal. All right, so we're going to put that. Okay, all those in favour say aye.
Oh, sorry.
Aye. Against? Right, I'm going to change the agenda, so we're going to make number 15 is going to become 18, simply because that has the potential to go into confidential at the end of it. So we're now going to deal with